we're building it around this concept that you're either a green apple or a, moldy, shrinking, dying apple as an individual. So it doesn't matter whether your goal or what you're trying to learn or something is a skill or a goal that is personally or professionally related, as long as you are a growing human, like a green apple. And so that's what we're actually going to really simplify. And we were thinking comes back to the business values. If our core value of the business is to make people happy and well, then we need to make sure our team is happy and well.
Welcome to the Profitable Farmer podcast, where we share stories and tips to help you run a better farming business and create your very own freedom farm. If you're looking to work smarter and not harder in your farm business, welcome. You're in the right place. G'day everyone, I hope this finds you well. As I've said before, there are so many wonderful stories, unsung heroes in small business and farm business ownership regionally, just doing fantastic things. And in this podcast, it just gives me real pleasure to introduce to you Zoe Lamont, who I've known as a child since growing up. We were family friends and we've always respected and known the Lamonts as a great regional and rural family. And her husband, Frank, who couldn't be with us for this interview, they bought 8 years ago a business that was then called My Chef in Wagga, a team of 3. And now that business is a team of 30 providing high quality, nutritious food to many markets across the whole of Australia and supporting a lot of local growers and producers to the best of their ability. The business is called Farm Door Riverina, and it is a real quiet success story that links to agriculture. And I guess what impresses me most in this conversation is the depth of the integrity behind the brand and the degree to which Frank and Zoe have had to make some really solid decisions and fall back on their ethics and fall back on their core values and make sure that they remain committed to quality and committed to providing the very best product that they can in times of real hardship. It also reminds me, and I say this often, that business and farm business ownership and entrepreneurship is one of the toughest assignments on the planet. And I really thank Zoe for her openness as we uncover and share the Farm Door story about just how challenging business ownership can be and some of the challenges that they've had to endure through COVID and other to really grow their business and to establish a really significant high quality regional brand providing a great service across Australia. Enjoy this interview and thank you, Zoe and Frank, for sharing so openly. Speak again soon. Thanks, Zoe.
Thanks, Jeremy.
How are you, Zoe?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you.
Right.
Excited to chat.
Perfect. So, Zoe, just for our listeners, how do you describe your connection to farming and to agriculture?
Well, I think as most of the listeners would appreciate, I grew up on a farm near Junee, and I think when you grow up on a farm, you have it in your blood, whatever you end up doing.
Absolutely. So tell us about that farm that you grew up on and your time as a child, Zoe.
So I grew up on the farm with one brother and 4 cousins, and we were in separate houses on the other side of the farm, but we had a laneway in between, so we spent a fair bit of time at either house, and my grandparents run another house on the farm as well. So between bikes, motorbikes, and various other billy carts and contraptions we used to build, we used to get about and spend a fair bit of time at the different houses. And it was my cousin sort of ran a racehorse stud, and my dad and mum were more focused on cropping, mainly wheat and canola. And Mum also for many years had a sweet pea garden mulch business that she used to use the mulch from peas. And then there was a few sheep.
Perfect. Fond memories, yeah?
Yeah, great way to grow up.
And Zoe, you and I have both spent years in business coaching and life coaching. And I know in that you focused intently in on financial and life coaching for rural women. Would you mind just giving everyone a bit of your backstory helping rural women and some of those projects that you pioneered?
Yeah, sure. So I wouldn't say I had total clarity on my life direction when I left school. It's a bit of a rat bag at uni, and then ended up going overseas and spending a couple of years involved in some humanitarian projects in southern India and in Zambia, and with some Burmese illegal migrant children along the Thai-Burmese border, and a small stint in Fiji. And I think that experience just really changed my perspective on life. And when I came back and, got a corporate job in Sydney, I lasted about 3 months. I was like, what is this? I was like, oh my gosh, we're so lucky to be in Australia. We've got absolutely like so many resources, education, everything compared to these communities that I had seen. But you hop on a bus in Sydney and you're literally touching someone. And when you look at them and say good morning or something, you get like a look like you're a weirdo, and everyone's just glued to their phones. And it's like, what's wrong with our society? Like we need to make the most of all these resources. And, there were happier families like living in cardboard boxes, that I had been living and working with in some different communities overseas. And so I ended up a long track, but working with a few really interesting social impact, social enterprise businesses in the energy sector and a couple of others, and really started to see the difference between businesses and individuals who planned and were aware of their finances and stuff versus the ones that were just going gung-ho without some strategy behind it. And I used to say to my girlfriends, we need to treat ourselves like a business. We need like a life plan. And so it started with catch-ups in the pubs with friends, and then friends of friends, and eventually I launched something called the 10,000 Girl campaign, and over the next 10 years ran life and financial literacy workshops around, ran them in the cities as well, but really focused on regional Australia because, as I said, in your blood, you want to help your own communities that you grew up in. So that was really exciting way to kick off my career in my 20s. Learned a lot.
What are you most proud of about that part of your journey, Zoe?
I think just following your heart and thinking of a problem in the world that you want to solve and going for it, building the community around you to make your vision happen. And I think when your intentions are really values driven, I don't know, it feels like the world helps you. People turn up at the right time. And then over the next few years, a few personal things happened with like our little boy got quite sick and stuff. And I said, I really want to move, sort of give the 10,000 Girl campaign assets and stuff away, but I want them to live on and not be wasted. And really interestingly, out of the blue, had a phone call from Christina Hobbs, who later became my business partner in a women's ethical super fund that we ended up starting, and three of us established that, and that's called Verve Super. So it was good to see those assets morph into another entity.
And where is Verve Super at today? What does it look like, and what is that project achieving?
So a year or so ago, we actually sold. So after running Verve for 5 or so years, and it was being really successful, one of the most successful startup super funds and with an incredible, again, values aligned focus on engaging and educating women to take control of, their superannuation, which is a lot of people's largest asset, but using your superannuation not only for your own personal, to set yourself up for a comfortable retirement, but also making sure that money is used for good. So we were quite passionate about being quite transparent where that money was invested. So a lot of people felt values aligned because it wasn't in fossil fuels and it was in renewable energy project or affordable housing projects, but still getting a really exciting return, but having that social impact as well.
Amazing, Zoe. So my son just asked me to read Ned Brockman's book. And, I hear you speaking and think about what Ned Brockman did. He, packed up from a trade in Sydney and ran across Australia raising money for the homeless. And he talks about his 4,600-kilometre runs or something over 46 days and arriving in Bondi. Amazing. But just another really inspiring example of someone who determined to solve a problem on the planet or make a difference and live life with a real social conscience and with that deep desire somehow to make an impact. So, yeah, some great stories, but congratulations, because that idea that you had has now become something so significant for so many.
Now we're on a mission, along with Maggie Beard, to improve health and nutrition in families and in the aged care sector.
Which I can't wait to speak about, Zoe. But just before we do, let's bring Frank into this conversation. And he couldn't be with us today, but what's Frank's backstory prior to Farm Door?
So before we built the business, he was working as a meat trader for an independent meat trading company, and then moved into sales with a regional abattoir. And his family background, so his mum's a chef and he's grown up in commercial kitchens in Sydney and southeast Queensland. So he's got food in his blood and he's really passionate about good food. And so when he was actually made redundant when this abattoir was, closing down, and we had a 10-day-old baby, our first child, and that really shocked him because he'd literally 6 months before been sort of headhunted for that job. We'd moved from Sydney to, back to a regional town, and then all of a sudden, had no job. And I think it was very interesting, and he speaks quite openly about this, those sort of, like, I wasn't putting pressure on him because we had a bit of a buffer. I was still working a bit. I thought, oh, this is great. We can have, some more time together. But he found it really confronting, and actually, like, kudos to him, sought some external help and stuff to work through that. And then the good old Cootamundra community found him a job in the interim, I think, to keep him in the rugby team for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. Once you're part of the Cootamundra Tricolours, we'll do anything to keep you. That's for sure.
But it wasn't really what he was built for or had any experience in, but credit to them, and it was pretty wonderful. But then that's when we were like, okay, we want to put our destiny in our own hands, and that's when we went on the hunt for a business.
I remember having a cuppa with Frank years ago, Zoe, when you were just starting to consider that notion of buying a business, and it's amazing to see where you've come to. So what was it that inspired you both to determine to buy a business?
I think it was different for both of us. I think for Frank, it was more going away from, what did they say? The carrot and the stick sort of. For me, I've always been more carrot orientated, and, I've always run my own show or been involved in, something I've got some sense of control over, where Frank had grown up like that in small business, but he was more like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be controlled by other people anymore. And so we just spoke to a heap of people, whether that be a few accountants. We were looking in around Toowoomba or Wagga to be near one of our families, and just spoke to, accountants, business brokers, told everyone we know, and eventually found this business.
How extensive was that search? You mentioned speaking to lots of accountants and lots of people. Did it take quite a while, and did you look at a lot of businesses in that search period?
To be honest, I really was in baby brain work survival mode. I can't even hardly remember, but we did look at different businesses, from like tire companies to, oh, this one business broker wanted to sell us like a Dunkin' Donuts in the marketplace. And we're like, oh my God, this is not for not for us. So it was a really interesting process going through, the due diligence of a few different businesses. But when we found this one, we sort of, because Frank wanted to be in food, but at the same time, he spent a lot of his years growing up in a pub. He didn't want to be in retail hospitality because of the impact on family. And so we sort of had narrowed it down to maybe we could find a wholesale food business. And then when this came up, we saw, great opportunity.
So what did My Chef look like when you first sort of stumbled upon it and looked at the opportunity to buy it?
So it was run by a chef. So the food was always really good, and he was very passionate about cooking from scratch. And, so there's never been any use in all its history of preservatives or, powders, colorings, flavors, and anything like that. So that was really important to us, but there was no brand. It was like this black and white little Papa Giuseppe, man. And there was no communication or anything around it. It was 100% or 95% servicing Meals on Wheels in Canberra, Sydney, and locally, and then a little retail shop. And it was, even the kitchen was also like sort of the garage door, and it was quite, the concept of ready meals was quite new at that point. The market has, really changed and become much more competitive over the last 8 or so years in that space.
How do you reflect on your first 12 or 18 months in the business, Zoe? What was it like?
Well, since I had a baby strapped to my front, running the retail shop, working out, all the accounts, customers, and then Frank was working in the kitchen, the packing room, doing the deliveries. He'd go to Sydney one week, Canberra the next week. Like, it was very different to how we're doing things now. But you have to I think in any business, you have to throw yourself and know intimately each role in the business, and only then you can effectively, find someone to do this bit. And then, when you grow out of that, okay, we can find someone to do this part. But I think it was the only way to throw ourselves in and both be really intimately. It was a new, like, we'd never been in manufacturing, and well, we'd both worked in abattoirs in our past, but we'd never run a manufacturing business before.
How important is it, on reflection, to find a business and do business in an area that you're passionate about?
I think it would be very important to either be passionate about or have some base knowledge in the type of business, whether it be like manufacturing or, service business or whatever it might be, or in the industry or content. For us, it was food is a really central part of both our lives and our families, particularly Frank's. And so that passion gets you through the unknown.
Absolutely. And Zoe, did you have a vision for what it could be then, or was your vision different from what it is today?
I think early on, we knew there was opportunity in the market, but for the first year or so, we were just learning the business. And then we rebranded. We had our first rebrand. So we kept the name My Chef, but we, created it in this green circle and started considering and talking to supermarkets and, other customer categories. But I wouldn't say in that first year or so that we had the same vision what we have now.
So how do you describe the business today? Let's jump forward 8 years. Would you mind just describing the business, the team, who you supply, your reach, maybe even what you see your point of difference being now compared to then?
Yeah, sure. So after 3 years, and Frank was always very focused on this goal that in 3 years, when our lease was up, that we would move and build our own, proper food facility.
Yep.
So we did that almost to the day. And so with no help from Wagga Council, we had to move out of town a little bit. So we had to shut down our retail element of the business, but we ended up building a quite substantial sort of facility inside the old wool combing shed in Bowman, just out of Wagga. So it looks like an big old shed from the outside, but when you walk in, it's actually sort of a building inside that, made of cool room panels, and had some help from some consultants in Melbourne to really help us with the efficiency. So where ingredients go in, then it goes into the kitchen, then it goes into the, cool rooms to, bring the temperature down, and then it's pulled out the other door to the packing. So, and then there's a central washroom, so there's no cross-contamination. So it's really exciting from an efficiency and food safety viewpoint. And so once because we'd sort of grown out of our capacity at the first one, so then we built this facility and now we had real capacity to grow. So then COVID hit. So while we were on this, trajectory, we'd introduced chilled meals. So then we had a range of frozen meals, a range of chilled meals. We introduced a kids' frozen meal range. So we'd grown into supermarkets, and that was helping diversify from the aged care sector. Anyway, so COVID hit and we had some real challenges with some fast rising food, freight, packaging, labour, energy, our 5 sort of, main cost of goods. And that was, to be honest, really scary. We didn't know whether our hearts wanted to get through that phase, but we had consultants coming in and helping us because the supermarkets wouldn't let you put your prices up within 12 months. So we had to cash flow the business for, I think it was around 8 months, when we were just getting these emails every week from packaging suppliers and, this tray is now either unavailable and you have to buy it in a much bigger quantity to, lock a container in, which locks up your cash flow, or it's also going up by 36%, and then the chicken email would come in, and then it was just constant. Every day there was something else that was affecting our margins. And
so everyone put their prices up over that period, didn't they? And so I can only imagine the significant impact that had on you and your business and cash flow. Were you able to correct your pricing? You mentioned with supermarkets that there was a delay in that, 8 or 12 months. But were you able to adjust your pricing and have some control over what you were selling your produce for?
So not for that 8 months, but then when we reached that next 12-month mark, we definitely had to make that correction. And we were lucky at that time because My Muscle Chef, which is probably our main competitor on the supermarket shelves, had put their prices up the month or so before. So we weren't then going to be the most expensive product on the shelf. So yeah, that was good to see as well, that we weren't the only ones, obviously.
Zoe, when you bought the business, you weren't in the supermarkets. And then when COVID hit, to what degree were you reliant, or was your revenue through supermarket chains, and how big was that component of your business?
So at that stage, so a couple of years ago, we were pretty much half aged care and half supermarkets. And then during that time where it got really tight, and we had to do another big rethink on where we want to be positioned in the market. And again, you get your external consultants, and some of them came in and said, we have to, shrink our meals, don't buy the local olive oil, use vegetable oil, all these different things. And it just wasn't sitting right. And we knew financially that would help, but then we weren't doing what we set out to do. We wouldn't have a high quality, nutrient dense product if we don't use extra virgin olive oil that was, made on a farm 10 minutes away versus vegetable oil. If we shrunk our meals, then, people aren't getting the protein intake that they require. So there were just so many things that weren't sitting right. And so we had to have a rethink of, if we didn't want to compromise the quality, we had to find the customers that were willing to pay. And we knew there were plenty of people that want good food. And we have increasingly getting phone calls from a whole range of people, but mainly even friends our age that were looking for good meals for their parents, people in their 70s and 80s who were getting meals somewhere, but they didn't like them, or they knew that they had high sodium and preservatives and all kinds of things. And so we thought, okay, then we had a good friend who was a pharmacist who said, I wouldn't mind stocking these meals. I want to get more into preventative health. And we thought, that's interesting. And they started flying. And so we have grown in that market and really working with nearly 100 pharmacies now from all down Queensland, New South Wales, ACT, Victoria, Tassie, and really it feels like a partnership. Like we're working with these pharmacists to create a preventative health solution through providing nutritious meals. So when people get their Webster packs delivered, they can have a healthy meal each day. And we got an email from a pharmacy in Chinchilla in Queensland the other day that just said, we're having conversations in some of these regional towns. People haven't been eating a real meal each day, and now they can access a real meal each day. So it's pretty exciting.
And so how has the product changed for you, Zoe, from 8 years ago? You mentioned moving to frozen foods, and now when I go to one of those pharmacies and I open the freezer door, what do I find?
So we've got 2 core frozen ranges now. So there is the main meals, and then we make some petite meals, soups, snacks, desserts, but they're all geared for one person. So that the majority of the pharmacies stock those individual meals. But the other thing we did to, create a part of our business that we can be a price setter rather than buying on the other end is launching home delivery. But with that, so we don't tread on the pharmacist's toes, it's family meals. So like 2 kilo lasagnas, or 1 kilo chicken pies, and curries and casseroles and potato bakes. And so there's those 2 ranges, and both frozen, one home delivery more geared to families, and one individual meals available at the pharmacies.
Amazing. When you bought the business, it was very focused on retirees and I think nursing homes and retirement villages. Is that still also a real key component to your business?
Yeah, we've probably become like the premium provider in those for the Meals on Wheels and aged care sector. So there are a few that now only serve our meals because they realized that they were growing when they were serving good food. But in other areas and with different managers of these different services, they're much more price sensitive. So they might have ours in their gourmet menu and then, have some lower priced meals available as well. So there's a fair range. We still look after that market, absolutely.
How important is it, Zoe, to continue to support producers and to buy local as a business where you can?
So this is where we became really clear when we had that sort of margin squeeze phase that we just weren't willing to compromise on that, because we are the only ready meal manufacturer based in regional Australia. So much of our Riverina produce is shipped out and then bought back in by our supermarkets and stuff. This is mad. The food miles, obviously there's the environmental impact, but there's also hard costs, there's freshness, that is impacted. And so we are 100% committed to sourcing locally where we can. So whether it's on a smaller scale, so, buying the end of season produce from our local strawberry farm, or getting our olive oil vat filled up, or working with a regenerative pork farmer to design a new thing, a new meal that moves some of his excess. Or so there's so many different regional providers, and we're loving, because it's reasonably new and it's a real focus of our new Farm Door brand, really loving building these relationships, and it'll be exciting to see where some of these collaborations can go.
A shout out to farmers who might want to make contact with you, Zoe. How can they?
Definitely. Just, send us an email or give us a call. All the details are on the website. But if you have an excess of anything or an idea of something you want to grow or produce on a micro scale, whether it's a protein or a herb or vegetable, or on our farm we grow all our hardy herbs, so rosemary, thyme, oregano, mint, shallots. It's easy to grow some of those things, and there's also so much opportunity, I think, in that sort of health and well-being sector, to think about what else we can grow and what other products. It might not necessarily be a meal, but what other sort of health and well-being products we might be able to create in the future with things that grow well locally.
An obvious question, but I'm keen for your response. How much better is the product when it is sourced directly and locally?
Oh, of course. People can taste the difference. That's why we have never invested in one bit of digital advertising, contrary to, what we should be doing, or because our product sells itself, because people tell people about it, because it tastes like you do at home, because we cook our gravies made with homemade stock. We use olive oil rather than vegetable oil. Everyone knows good quality meat makes a huge difference. So
and what's your view on the impact that can have, or the impact that good food has on well-being, now that you're sort of working with pharmacists and in those retirement villages and nursing homes? And there's a wonderful documentary, and you mentioned Maggie, about the impact that her introducing higher quality food in her movement in retirement villages and nursing homes is having a profound effect on the elderly. What's your view on the importance of food in the wellbeing space?
I think some of these impacts are really well illustrated in Maggie Beer's documentary, and it's about, yes, having a nutritional diet, because some stat, over 80% of people in aged care are malnourished or at risk of malnutrition, which is shocking. We're talking about the people that have built our society and infrastructure and everything, that have worked so hard through their lives. And then, anyway, blows my mind. So there's the nutritional impact, but I think even more important than the nutritional benefits is the dignity piece and the enjoyment piece. And so often a meal can be people's highlight of their day. And I think if you can eat a roast dinner or have a slow cooked beef bourguignon or something that can bring back memories, and that it feeds your soul as well. And I think that's incredibly important at any age, but particularly when people aren't as stimulated by other things, once they're retired and life's slowed down a little.
Are you seeing that and getting feedback from the elderly that your project feeds now? And what is the feedback that you're getting now that they have access to those roasts and those bourguignons and the other incredible products that you provide?
Well, we might be the only business in Australia who receives testimonials on like flowery letterheads and by the mail. Some of our dear customers just call us out of the blue. I just wanted to say I've been buying your meals from, X pharmacy for many months now, and I just wanted to be in touch to say thank you very much. And I enjoyed this, and this is my favorite. And so we get that on the phone, plus the odd letter, which is just like everyone loves. Yeah, it would be good if they wrote Google reviews instead.
Are you allowed to copy them and turn them into Google reviews?
Totally.
You just take a screenshot. If you put that up as a Google review, it'd be priceless.
Hopefully now we haven't, like, we've launched the home delivery to families, but it's probably because pharmacies have been so busy, all our attention sort of has been on them. Once we can shift our energy and invest in promoting the home delivery, we might have more Google reviews from families rather than
from the corporate double income families of Sydney and Melbourne. They might be on to the Google reviews.
Exactly.
What do you predict will be the level of uptake from those busy families and might not have that time for wholesome cooking? Do you predict that that's quite a big market for you in the future?
Yeah, it's huge. And it's a capacity thing that we just have to let people know, because the people who do find out, which at the moment, I don't even know how they're finding us, but we're getting repeat, whether it be because it's frozen, people don't have to order weekly, but whether it's fortnightly and monthly repeat purchases means that hopefully it's making their lives easier and they're enjoying them.
How many meals do you produce a day, Zoe, as a business?
Between 2,000 and 3,000.
Wow. And would you mind just telling me a bit about the team that exists now to support the business?
So we've got a couple of chefs and a couple of kitchen hands. So they're, obviously kitchen based. And then there is the other half of the production team are in the packing room. So they, after the meals have been chilled, they put them into the trays and seal and label them, box them up, and then we've got a couple of guys in dispatch who pick and pack the orders, and then a couple of drivers, and then we use some external cold chain logistics, freight providers as well.
So is it a team of 30?
Yeah, 30, but maybe about 7 or 8 of those are part-time, and with a handful of high schoolers that come each evening and put the meals that are in the blast freezer into boxes.
Zoe, how do you support your team and do culture? With our farming families that we work with, we're helping them move from perhaps being a bit amateur around the HR and the team and the leadership piece to being highly professional on farm. Org charts, job descriptions, performance reviews, career plans, really consistent and regular meetings, a strategic plan that the team's aligned to, a set of core values that are pinned on the wall, all those things. I know in our background, you've been a business coach, so you've helped people in a lot of those areas. How do you do team and culture, and how do you support your people?
Just because you teach it, Jeremy, doesn't mean that you nail it in your own business. So this is a total, learning area. And because we grew quite quickly from like 3 to 30, I wouldn't say that we're absolutely nailing every facet, but definitely we are really transparent with our sort of vision document, and that's given to everyone as part of their induction when they first come. So I don't know whether everyone engages in that, but it's certainly available for everyone. And I suppose we've gone from having nothing, so this wasn't all built in a day, but over the last few years, a few of the key things we've implemented is Connect Team. So it's just it sort of feels like a social media platform when you're in it, but that's, I suppose, where we share team updates, where people can also clock in and out, change their shifts, apply for leave, but also see if we have a team event and have some systems documents. And so we use that central communication platform to share a bit of this, like with their induction process, and a lot of food safety training and stuff's done through that. So that was good to implement an actual, like, something that we can put all these things in. And then I think I've gone in phases of being really good at like regular performance reviews and then slacking off for a while. And I'm actually back on the boat. Frank and I have a business coach who at the moment we're meeting with monthly, and that's great. But we've also engaged more recently our leadership coach for the team. So we have only had 2 sessions so far, but they've been really great and the team loved them. We're doing quarterly for the whole team and monthly for the leadership team, so anyone managing people. And I think this is really good. I think it would be in a farming as well as manufacturing. Often you all of a sudden managing people, but you haven't had any leadership or management skills. You're just good at what you do. And then you're expected to be a people manager. And so we really realized that we had these great, passionate individuals, but why weren't people delegating more and stuff? Because you don't know how. And so this has been really good to have an outsider come in and work through the motions of good leader, like communication as leaders. And I mean, we've only just started, but I think it's going to be really great to have that external resource. And then we've recently formalized, because we're actually going to bring someone on to buy into the business. So it made us like really get clear on org chart and position descriptions and stuff, which was a really good exercise. That was a bit loose before. But I'm actually going to change our performance sort of review processes quite substantially for this fin year. And instead of just being around sort of professional and business goals, we're building it around this concept that you're either a green apple or a, moldy, shrinking, dying apple as an individual. So it doesn't matter whether your goal or what you're trying to learn or something is a skill or a goal that is personally or professionally related, as long as you are a growing human, like a green apple. And so that's what we're actually going to really simplify. And we were thinking comes back to the business values. If our core value of the business is to make people happy and well, then we need to make sure our team is happy and well. So that's all part of that process, but I'll have to let you know how that goes.
I love it. But it does speak to the importance of being authentic to those values at our core and with our team as well as with our customers. So what is that broader value statement or mission statement that you have as a business now, Zoe?
Well, I think we talk about our well-being being our superpower. I think in a really changing world, it's hard to pin your happiness on things and on, there's a real shift in that, isn't there? And as I shared before, my couple of nights ago, my childhood family home burnt down suddenly, and it's been really interesting to reflect on, are you connected to things in the world, or is it your memories and the social connections that were around that thing? And so I think, we've written this on the branded freezers that are inside pharmacies, on the packaging, like your well-being is your superpower, and it's going on, our team uniforms. And so we're really trying to focus on that sort of being happy and well.
I love it. And helping your team pursue their own personal or professional goals and well-being being a core part of that. That's incredible.
And this guy, Steve, who's taking us through this leadership coaching, we were having these conversations the other day that it's much more energizing to be around a green apple, someone who's growing and inspired and alive and learning. Like, they're more interesting to be around if you have XYZ passion, or if, you're just sort of surviving.
How helpful and how important has it been for you and Frank to have that external support and to have a business coach and now a leadership coach in your corner?
We've always had really good accountants that were almost, not, of course, they do your tax, but really management accountants. And particularly one of the partners at the firm, Frank, and I are so grateful to him, and he's mentored us a lot, even in team culture and leadership. And I just think having good people around that have built businesses. Our business coach, she was the old sort of CFO of Adidas and Country Road, and then bought a bakery with her husband, and it was, turning over like 600,000, which was about the same as us when we bought My Chef, and then sold it for 30 mil 10 years later. And so some really interesting manufacturing and business learning from her, but really sort of financially focused. So yeah, I just think it's so important having a good network around you, whether it's other like-minded businesses or, coaches and consultants. And
I think you've also been part of a mastermind group of local entrepreneurs who I know are great friends of yours, Zoe. How supportive has that been, and how important is it to try and put a mastermind around some of our entrepreneurial pursuits?
yeah, I missed that actually. For a few years there, we were catching up with all different businesses. We were all in different industries, and we would catch up, I think it was once a month or once every couple of months, and all like share a challenge, listen to someone else's challenge. Everyone gives their perspectives. Yeah, outside perspectives, gold, wherever they come from. Everyone can see your life and your business more clearly than you can.
Zoe, what does the future look like for you and Frank and the business? And where do you predict or hope the business might move to in its next chapter?
Well, yeah, I don't even think we've started home delivery. So I think that affordable home cooked meals are absolutely, a need and can add a lot of value to a family, because lots of us now, there's two working parents, there's a lot of other things going on in society. And so if you can free up, even if it's, a couple of nights a week, that time and just be able to pull something out of the freezer and pop it in the oven. I mean, we eat it every night. It's so good. And also as gifts, like even, I just dropped chicken pies to everyone in the district to help fight this fire a couple of nights ago. Food is a great gift. So on that home delivery sort of family meal front, I think we haven't even started. We don't even know the true potential of that, but I think that's exciting. And then in that aged care space, again, I'm just with Maggie Beer, like we have to do something different because everyone deserves to eat good, nutritious food. And so we're working really hard to learn about the My Aged Care subsidies. Many people aren't even aware that they can claim, pay 30% of the meal cost and claim 70%. And that can really change lives.
How important is it for business owners like yourself, but like those growers that you mentioned, to be good at sharing their story?
I mean, we haven't been very good at marketing. This is our first Farm Door podcast, Jeremy. Thanks for the opportunity. But even when I'm pulling together a lot of our supplier stories at the moment in order to, share them to launch this long lunch, and everyone's got such inspiring stories. And these are some people I've known for years and don't even know their story. It makes you even more committed to buy their produce. And so, yeah, I think human stories, I mean, it's at the core of everything. And humans create change, don't they? And change is about growing and where inspiration lies. So I think, yeah, the human stories behind all these producers. And that is what I think will really help our region lift our profile as a food bowl and help the city people come and visit. We'd love to open the farm, to have some tourism and food enjoyment and education experiences over the next few years. And I know there's a lot of, we're 10 minutes from a chocolate factory, 15 minutes from a cheese factory, 10 minutes from an olive farm, 20 minutes from a strawberry farm. We think that's only in the Hunter or in Orange, but it's here. But I just think it's really exciting for the Riverina. There's some really exciting things happening.
Wonderful. Last question. It's two questions in one, but how challenging has the journey been on reflection? And in and around that, what are you personally most proud of, Zoe?
Oh, I think there's so many challenges. When those costs changed really quickly through COVID, that was deeply scary. You just put everything on the line as a business owner, and you invest, like we sold other things to buy the business, like we have everything on the line, and that is scary. But I think if you just keep really focused on being clear on those values, doing the right thing, surely we can get through, the hard times. And I think if you do the right thing, then, you haven't led well through that time, you can apologize to the team and you can re-kickstart if you've let meetings drop off, or you can re-kickstart your culture at any point. So any mistakes are fixable along the way. And I think what I'm most proud of is probably still having our marriage, because working 24 hours and, running your family and your business is not always easy. But Frank and I, we're still alive. We're still in love.
So many of our farming families are husband and wife teams, and like you, they're 24/7 on their farms and doing business together, and it puts huge pressure, doesn't it, on marriages and those key relationships.
And even with the kids, like, you've got to be so mindful that you don't drift off into business conversations over the dinner table. And, just drawing that line is really challenging sometimes. But I guess just as long as there's improvement over time, it's not going to be perfect.
Is there anything you and Frank do in particular to try and separate business and family life?
Calling each other. Like if we're talking to the kids about something and then Frank just starts a random conversation, because of course it's on his mind, about a pharmacy that something exciting's happened or something, like we have to call each other. Can you tell me later? Or tell us all and get the kids involved, because they're amazing as well. And it's great, like to get them involved, and our kids, can pack boxes and get an understanding of, manufacturing and business, the good times and the bad times, but it can't be all the time. So calling each other out when we need to change hats.
Zoe, thank you so much for your time and for your openness. And I want to say just a heartfelt congratulations on the journey, but I guess in particular the fact that in and around that you've always stayed true to your values and your purpose, and the fact that you prioritized quality when all the chips were down and your back was completely against the wall. And so many businesses don't. I think about how small a Pringles got, and it's just nuts how many businesses compromise quality for profit. And the fact that you haven't done that, and the fact that you've stayed true to local producers and local makers and stayed true to the quality of food that you want to provide to those elderly and those, families that are time poor. I just think it's incredible. And it's got, no surprise at all that your business is taking off and growing and flying, because you've stayed true to what you believe and your integrity, I guess, at the end of the day. So congratulations to you and Frank, and sincerely thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for all you do. And it's been great to reflect with you.
Take care, Zoe, and best to Frank, and speak again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Profitable Farmer podcast by Farm Owners Academy. If you're new to this show, be sure to follow us. If you've been a long-time listener, let your friends know about us, or come continue the conversation in the Profitable Farmer Facebook group. All the best as you grow your business and create your freedom farm. Until next time, keep being incredible.